And we'll kind of slowly get started here while see if other people are still joining. So I see a lot of familiar names here. But if anyone doesn't know me, I'm Amber Wewell and I'm the coordinator for the Atlas. So for tonight, I put together a pretty short slideshow just to kind of keep me on track and to show some numbers and things to kind of recap the summer. So I'm hoping I can get through that fairly quickly. And then I can kind of open up to you all for any questions you have, particularly about the breeding season or kind of about atlasing in general, about eBird, whatever. Um, if you think of any questions while we're going through the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat and I can read them at the end, or you can wait till the end and jump on and ask yourself. Those are both fine. I'm going to go ahead and share now. Looks like we have a good number of people on. Okay. So let's wrap up our first breeding season for the third Pennsylvania Bird Atlas. And I just want to quickly give a shout out here to Hawk Mountain Sanctuary and the Game Commission. There are just like a small group of us, or a small group of people that get a lot of the recognition for this big project, but there are some people working behind the scenes that are really critical to things happening, and a lot of like the products that you see, um, and the maps and things. So we have to make sure that we're giving credit to those folks as well. So a lot of people are putting a lot of work into this, in addition to all of you volunteers. So actually, I forgot to ask. The last town hall I did, I kind of jumped right in and I didn't do too much intro, and it turned out I had some Atlas newbies on. Um, do I don't know if anyone wants to chime in, but do I have anyone here tonight who's like pretty new to the Atlas and doesn't know much of the Atlas background? Feel free to just like chime in if you want. I'm going to go with the assumption that most people kind of know what's going on with the Atlas. First timer. Okay. Well, okay. We have first timers, but I don't know if I had anyone who's like right now brand new to the Atlas who doesn't know the whole, breeding codes and blocks and that sort of thing. So I'm gonna like skip over most of that. But feel free to jump in with questions on that stuff if I'm saying things that are unfamiliar. So I think probably everyone here is aware that this is our third Atlas. So this is a community science project that takes about 5 years to collect the data for, and it's done every 20 years. So these were our first two Atlas products, really great books. And the whole idea is that we're documenting the birds of Pennsylvania on a really fine scale. So where they're located, um, relative abundance when we can estimate that, and in particular where they're breeding for the breeding atlas. There we go. So there are a whole bunch of reasons that the atlas and atlas data are important and really useful. And I think like one of the most, I don't know, one of my favorite reasons, and I think a lot of birders would agree with me, is just that we get to see these really cool maps that are produced. So for everyone who's looked at the second Atlas book, um, you flip through and you see all these maps. You see maps for all these species showing where they were found, breeding in the first atlas in the 80s and then in the second atlas in the early 2000s. And you can then see how things have changed. And oftentimes you can link that with, things that we know that are going on or have been going on in the state, in terms of habitat change or like general trends that are going on with species beyond just Pennsylvania. So here's an example of one of those maps for bald eagle. So, this species was very rare in the state just a few decades ago. And thanks to conservation and recovery efforts has made a big comeback. And so you can see a lot more blue squares on this map. So that's where it was found breeding in the last atlas. And we've surpassed this already in the third atlas. So that's really interesting to look at. And then, we take all this data that we get for all these species and we can identify which species we really need to focus conservation efforts on and what habitats are important, what parts of the state we need to be looking at. And one of the really big ways that this is that the breeding atlas is very important is because we get really precise information on where birds are breeding. And that's important because most of our legislation around protecting birds we're looking at protecting where they're breeding. So it's important to know where that's actually happening. So, we take all this information together to inform management. And then atlases just produce a ton of data. And that's particularly true for this generation of atlases where many are being done in eBird. So people can just collect a ridiculous amount of data. And that's available for all sorts of researchers to use for various projects. So, if you look through scientific literature for birds, you find lots of studies where they've used, they've even combined atlas data across multiple states and combine it with breeding bird survey route data. And they're able to ask these really interesting questions because there's so much data covering a lot of area. And then, so we're recapping the breeding season tonight. So we're primarily focused on talking about the breeding atlas. So this is, of course, this map shows our blocks. So really with the breeding atlas, the idea here is that in each of these tiny blocks across the state, we're trying to develop a list of species that we have evidence of them breeding there. And depending on the strength of that evidence, that places the species into one of these categories: possible breeder, probable breeder, or confirmed breeder. In a perfect world, we'd get, we'd know for sure if species were breeding, we'd get them all confirmed. But birds are tricky, so we don't get them all into that category. And then also, atlasing is awesome. When I started this job, this is the first atlas that I've ever participated in also. And when I started this job, it was fun and interesting to talk to people who had atlased before in Pennsylvania or elsewhere, and to hear their stories. But it wasn't until, this season that I got to see firsthand what that was really like. And, atlasing gives you more excuses to go birding. I'm sure that some of us have family members or other obligations that don't always appreciate that, but it's good for us. Getting out in nature, there's mental and physical health benefits. And I think that those benefits are compounded when you're working on something, bigger than just your own hobby, so we're working together to support conservation. And one of the things I think about all the time now is how much I'm learning. Even just in this first season, I feel like I've learned so much about things I've learned about specific species because I've seen a behavior that I never had observed before, or I've read up on their behavior and learned something. I've learned specifically when they're breeding in the state. And I'm noticing lots of things with, interactions that birds are having with habitats, and just on like a bigger scale. I feel like I'm getting a lot more information about our entire bird community in Pennsylvania. And that's been really fun. And I like to think about what, how much I'll know a few years from now when this is all wrapped up. And I think about how, with this being our third atlas, we have all these people that have been doing this multiple times now and carrying that knowledge from atlas to atlas. So we're just building upon our knowledge of birds in Pennsylvania and passing that knowledge on to other birds or to other birders. So that's very, very cool. And then another big piece of that is just connecting with everyone, whether that's going out birding with other people or just sharing your stories, or even if you can't get around the state, it's really fun to see, see on eBird and on Facebook and talk about it at bird club meetings and whatnot, and just see what other people are experiencing and hear their stories. And just, kind of exploring whether you are actually the one out there doing it or you're kind of living vicariously through other birders. And I just, I've received a number of really nice stories and anecdotes from people. But I just wanted to share this one from Barb Stone, who I think is on here tonight. She's one of the coordinators from Susquehanna County. So she said, several of us decided to cover this block. I contacted the owner of a large wetland in the block and asked if we could survey there. He was very interested and agreed to allow us access. The day we arrived, we discovered that he'd mowed a path down to the wetland for us with parking. When we finished later that morning, we found a bag with food gifts for us that he had attached to the car mirror. Rural hospitality at its finest. I love that story. And I think that's really encouraging because we do have to kind of step outside of our comfort zone sometimes with atlasing, with, driving down roads and like asking permission to bird in places and probably looking like a weirdo sometimes in our with our binoculars and whatever. But, you never know what you're going to find. Really cool findings are real I don't know, there's just there you never know what species you will find or where you will find a nest. Someone found an osprey nest that they knew nothing about when they were doing a point count, and it was at a place that they wouldn't have gone otherwise. They weren't doing a point count there. So there's so much to explore and learn. It's very exciting. All right, so switching gears a little bit. So here we are kind of in a lull in terms of atlasing. So we have a little time. So what can you be doing now to kind of get your things in order and to prepare for next season? So one of the really important things to do is to check over your data and make sure that you've submitted it through the Pennsylvania Bird Atlas portal in eBird, not just into Core eBird. And you want to do this by not going to our Atlas portal website, because if you go there, you'll only see the data that you've submitted through the portal. So you want to go to Core eBird, go to ebird.org, your checklists, and something I've noticed recently that wasn't happening before is that when I go to eBird and look at my checklist, it automatically has these filters on. So it's only showing me my Pennsylvania checklists and my Atlas checklists. So I need to click that X to turn off the Atlas so I can see all my checklists. And then I can see, I can look for this symbol that the arrow is pointing to at the end of my checklists. So it's a little green circle with a little white circle in it. That's the portal symbol. So
let's go.
So if you see that symbol, that means you have submitted that checklist through a portal. So that'll show up if you've participated in an atlas in another state or if you've accidentally sent something to an incorrect portal, which hopefully that hasn't happened to anyone. I have done that myself. So you gotta kind of check on things every once in a while and make sure they're going to the right place. But then if you have missed doing it through the portal or vice versa, you didn't intend for it to go through the portal, it's really easy to change. So you just click on your checklist up in the top right, click on checklist tools, and then you find change portal there. And actually, a lot of people have had questions about how to do various things, and many of them are found under this checklist tools option. So if you need to, change something with the date or time or your location of your checklist, or you just need to delete it entirely, things like that, many of those options are found under checklist tools. So that's pretty easy to change. This is also a really good time if you have hidden any of your checklists because they contain sensitive information, such as a nest location that you didn't want to share publicly while the nest was still active. But it's something you can share now. Make sure you go back in and unhide those checklists because we won't see those otherwise. So this is also a good time to start assessing your blocks. So this is particularly true if you're a principal atlaser. But even if you're not a principal atlaser, if you have done a lot of work in a block or multiple blocks, you know, start checking them out and seeing how they're progressing, because this is how you will make a plan to complete your block next season or in a subsequent season. So on the left here, remember these are the criteria for considering blocks complete. So the biggest thing is just the overall number of species and then what breeding evidence we have for those species. So this varies a lot across the state, but in most blocks, we're looking at 70 plus species. And you can look at which species were reported previously in the block to get a sense of what that number should be around for your block. And you can talk to your county coordinator about it if you need assistance. And then we're looking at least 25% of those to be confirmed breeders and no more than 25% to be possible. And then everything else in the middle, in the probable category. And then below that are the other things. These are kind of like, you know, how you get to that number. So we'll talk about those more in a minute. But then you want to go in and look at your block data. And just as a reminder, you can do this in two ways. You can go to the effort map and zoom in and click on your block and then click view all block data to get to that page for your block, or you can just go to explore and you can type your block in there. You can also type in a county or just Pennsylvania if you want to see data for everything, just to explore, just because it's interesting. And then you can see what's been reported for your block, or the block that you're looking at, and what the highest breeding status is for each species. So then you can look at which species am I missing? Have I missed any habitats that would help me get some of those other species that are missing? Have I birded at different times of the season? So, you know, we're looking at roughly April through August for most of our effort. So have I hit up the early season, late season, in between? Have I done my nocturnal surveying? If priority species are present in my block, have I focused on those species? Because confirming those species is one of the key goals of the atlas. That will be some of the most useful data to collect. And then you take all that information together to make a plan for next season. So as a little example of this is a block that I bird in. There are a number of people birding in this block, so that's really nice. A lot of people working together. So there's a lot of effort, 108 hours. But a lot of people are kind of just, you know, going to the same places over and over, not necessarily getting a lot of different species. So you can see here, I've run my numbers. So 80 species total reported, and then of the so for those species, about 25% are 25% are possible breeders. That's what we want. We want no more than 25% to be possible. And then we want at least 25% of those to be confirmed breeders, and we're sitting here at 49. So that's good. That breakdown looks great, but we're only at 80 species, and I can look over here on the right side at my checklist of species reported in this block in the previous two atlases, and I see in the last atlas there were 93 species with breeding evidence. So I want to get that number a little higher for this block still. I know that, I believe that there are a couple species that don't breed here anymore because the habitat's not here, but I think the rest of them, you know, there's a good chance that they're here. So I'm now going through those species and thinking about what my plan is for trying to get those species next season. One example is American woodcock. I don't think that there are any breeding on public land, but I've identified a couple private properties that look like they could be potential woodcock habitat. And so I'm going to reach out to people this winter, reach out to those landowners and, you know, ask them if they know what woodcock are, if they know if they've heard woodcock there, and ask if I could check it out potentially. And I'm going to make sure I do that ahead of time so that, you know, when spring rolls around and it's time to go looking for woodcock, I've already hopefully gotten access to some places to go. That gives time for those people to respond to me, or if they say no, it gives me time to reach out to other people. Another example is great horned owl, which is only a possible breeder at this point in the block, but I do think they breed here. So I've got a plan in place for where and when I'm going to go look for great horned owl. And really, I think everyone has to decide how they want to get this information, record this information for themselves. I'm kind of an analog person, so I like to just like write this stuff down. So I print off these sheets with the species lists, and for my block, I then write, I check it every couple of weeks or whatever, check the progress, and I write what the highest code is for each species. And right now I have highlighted the ones that we didn't get or that I want to try to upgrade in the block next season. And so I have essentially this schedule that I'm creating for next season for the different blocks that I'm going to focus on to make sure that I don't miss things. I don't want to get to July and realize I forgot to go look for these woodcock or something like that. And this is all really important because it's going to be really important for us to start marking these blocks complete. And I say this while we still don't have the ability to do this in eBird yet. We're still waiting on that to happen with eBird, but hopefully that will happen soon. And I'll be sure to announce that to everyone when it happens. There are blocks that are complete at this time, but we just don't have the ability to show that in eBird. So you can see on this map, this is just an example from the Maryland DC Atlas. They're in the final year of their atlas. So you can see a bunch of these black blocks. So hopefully within the next month or so, we have some that, when you go to our map, you see some that are black. And this is something really important to keep in mind, because I think a lot of us are going to have the tendency to want to get our block to be the best it can be, right? Like, we're really excited about our block. We have places that we really love to bird there. We want to confirm as many species as possible, but that does not encourage us to move on and go start covering other blocks that need the effort. So that's just something that we all have to keep in mind, that, as soon as a block reaches these completion criteria, that we do go ahead and try to get it marked as complete in eBird. So that'll be a reminder for yourself then to go focus elsewhere. If you're, if it's your home block, or if it's somewhere that you are a lot, obviously still keep reporting your observations, and it's fine to keep upgrading things. But when you do have a chance to do some dedicated atlasing elsewhere, you should try to take that opportunity. And then it also is there for other people to see. So, next summer, if I have a chance to take a trip somewhere else in Pennsylvania, I can really quickly open up this map and see, look for the blocks that are incomplete and have less effort. So I can kind of pick where I can put some work in that will be most helpful. All right, I'm going to throw a few numbers at you from this breeding season and talk about what they mean a little bit. So we're sitting at right about 2,000 volunteers who have contributed data, and that's right around the number of people that participated in each of the previous two atlases. So I'm really pleased with that. I'm very hopeful that we'll reach a good number of people more, keep pulling more people into this project. One of the big things is that there are still eBirders out there who are not participating in the atlas. And it's hard to say with many of them why that is. Do they not know that there's an atlas? Do they know and not care? Do they know about the atlas and think that they are participating in the atlas? So that's something that we're continuing to work on, because those are, there's a clear hurdle to participating in the atlas. There's a learning curve, especially for people who are new birders and haven't even used eBird or are brand new to eBird. So those people that are already using eBird, and some of them are even using breeding codes already, those are like our ideal group of people to try to draw in to the atlas. You know, so if you know those people, try to talk with them and see what's going on, and if you can persuade them to jump over into the atlas portal. So altogether, you'll have contributed over 147,000 checklists, which is just wild. This is since January, so 9 months in. Now the caveat here is that since this has been all year, of course, some of these checklists don't have breeding codes in them, but it's still a tremendous amount of data, and it's really exciting. Kind of along the same lines, so we have about 90% of blocks that have had some amount of data submitted for them. But that includes everything. So that could be blocks that just have species observed in them, but nothing was coded, or blocks that just have like 1 or 2 or 3 species coded. So if you were to look closely at the data, I'm guessing that like the actual percentage of blocks that have a significant amount of data in them is probably more like 80-ish% or so. But in the last atlas at this time, so 1 year into the last atlas, they were at about 55% of blocks with data. So we're, in any case, we're ahead of that. So I think we're on a great trajectory to completing this project, to, you know, to getting really good coverage in our blocks. So that's looking great. We have around 178 species confirmed. The data have not all been reviewed yet, so this could change a little bit, but that's where we're sitting at approximately at this point. And that's out of around 190-ish species that we're expecting in our list of breeding species at the end of this project. And then, so we have 62 priority species. So those are, again, the species that we're focusing on really getting data for and trying to confirm as breeders in the blocks that they are in. And about 43 of those have been confirmed so far in at least one block. I just want to point out some of the species that aren't doing well in the state. So in particular, on the left in this table, these are the top 10 species that are that have probably suffered the most serious declines since the last atlas. And so these numbers are showing you the number of blocks that they were possibly, probably, or confirmed breeding in the first, second, and third atlases. So you can see those species there. And then I threw in another list on the right of some other species that are showing declines of varying degrees of severity. So yeah, some of these species are essentially gone from the state as breeders. And, you know, some of them are hanging in there, but have shown really serious declines. So on the flip side, here are a small group of species that are showing nice positive trends. So kind of the same thing, first, second, and third atlases. The caveat with both of these here is that we are comparing 1 season of data for this atlas with 5 seasons of data from the previous atlases. And again, I'm looking at data that has not been fully reviewed yet. But I think the trends are, you know, generally correct. And there are a whole lot of species that we don't talk about that much that are doing okay. You know, they have very stable trends, or maybe just slightly positive or negative trends, but overall doing pretty well. So interesting stories with all these species. So where do we need to kind of step things up for next season? So in terms of effort, the 2 things that stand out most to me, the first is that we just have swaths of the state that we have really not touched yet. So looking on the left side at this effort map showing the number of coded species for each block. So you can see areas that aren't colored in where they have no coded species, and then the light blue areas are where very few species have been coded. And you can see pretty big patches of no color or light blue. And a lot of those are places where we just don't have many people, many birders. So we really need to draw people into those areas. And we're planning block boosting events or kind of laying out areas where we would like to see block boosting happen in next season and beyond. And the idea is that we'll plan those in advance so people will kind of be prepared and ready to go hit up those areas next season. So be on the lookout for those. And this is also the kind of thing that people can just do on their own or with some birding buddies, as much of that as we can have happen in this second season and in the third season, that's going to make things go much smoother in seasons 4 and 5. So we're not doing a lot of rushing at the end. And then, yeah, our nocturnal effort was just not great this season. And I get it. It can be really intimidating to try to go out birding at night. And I know like there are definitely places in the state where people might not feel safe going out birding at night. But otherwise, we do need people to try to put forth that effort a little more. I have a friend who I live really close to, and we have neighboring blocks that we're covering. And so she and I have teamed up to help each other out with our blocks. So we went out, we did one trip to each of our blocks, I think, this season, and we got whippoorwill in my block and woodcock in her block. So that was great. So, reach out to principal atlasers around you. You could talk with people about it at bird clubs. If you are having trouble finding someone to go birding with you at night, you can even reach out on Facebook on the Atlas discussion page or on Discord. So, I think we need to like be sharing this more and kind of making sure that these things happen. And also, if you are part of a bird club that does lots of birding walks, see if your bird club will be willing to schedule 1 or 2 nocturnal walks in the right seasons. And that would be fun. And it would also, maybe people who are intimidated because they haven't done nocturnal birding before, that would help them kind of learn how it works and feel more comfortable doing it on their own in the future. And then kind of in terms of strategy, I guess I already talked about this one, but we need to be reaching out to those people who are already using eBird, but aren't participating in the Atlas, and try to pull more of those people in. And then we really need to focus on not just visiting a bunch of different blocks and different locations to go birding, which is kind of how we like to do it in eBird, right? Because we like our name to show up on those county lists all over the place. But we need to really focus on completing those blocks too, completing our blocks and moving on to other blocks. Okay, while I have everyone on, I just want to shout out the Pennsylvania Atlas of Life. Remember, this is the iNaturalist project that's running concurrent with the Bird Atlas. So you don't have to do anything to participate other than submit your observations through the iNaturalist app or the Seek app. And the idea here is that while we're exploring Pennsylvania looking for birds, we're observing lots of other things. So we might as well be, citizen sciencing all of those other observations as well. And so you can see on this summary page, you can find this just by Googling Pennsylvania Atlas of Life. So over 24,000 people have contributed to this. I'm sure that the vast majority of them have no clue that they are contributing to this project. And over 12,000 species have been documented. And if you click on that, on the species, then you can see this whole list of them. You can scroll through. It's really fun just to look at this and see the amazing diversity of life in Pennsylvania. And I always see things that I have never even heard of before. So that's really cool. All right, and then up next, we have the Winter Atlas launching on December 1st. We're trying to finalize some details, and we'll be putting out there's like a very short handbook. The Winter Atlas will be very simple compared to the Breeding Atlas. So we'll be putting that handbook out very soon, I'm hoping in October. And then we have another town hall coming up to talk about the Winter Atlas in November. So for the rest of the time tonight, I'm hoping we can keep questions primarily to breeding atlas, general atlasing. If we run out of questions and you want to ask about winter atlas stuff, that's fine. But we'll have an opportunity for that on down the line. And then here's my the email address where you can reach me and the website again. I'm sure everyone knows this by now, but just in case any new folks are here. All right. I'm going to stop sharing that. Let's see. I'm going to check out the chat real quick. Okay, so the question is, eBird counts a list as nocturnal when it begins a certain amount of time before sunrise. I think it might be 40 minutes. I always get this mixed up what the exact number is. But if you continue birding past sunrise, it stays listed as nocturnal. Do you have a filter for this situation? No, not really. We get like when we get the checklists, when we download the data, they're just labeled the way that eBird labels them. So really the best thing to do would be to just stop your checklist kind of when, if you're owling, like when the owls start quieting down and then it's like apparent that it's become morning and you're doing like regular daytime birding, you're getting daytime birds now, then you'd want to start a new checklist. That's really the practice that I would recommend then. All right, and the list of birds from the past atlases. So you have to go to what is called the block map tool, which is an ArcGIS page, and it's where we sign up for blocks. So that's linked on the website. Perhaps someone could drop the link into the chat to it. And so you click on a block there, and then on the left side of the screen, there's a panel, and it has a whole bunch of information there. It shows you if someone has signed up for the block as principal atlaser. It shows you who the county coordinator is, various things, and then you can get a species list. And it's a PDF, so you can download it and save it or print it, whatever you want to do. All right. That's everything I have so far in the chat. So feel free to keep entering questions in the chat if you want, or anyone can jump on now and ask a question or leave a comment. Tell us what your favorite bird was this summer. Or maybe everyone's good. Maybe everyone knows what they're doing.
So if the effort is measured based on what we put into eBird in Maryland, because I was atlasing there previously, I only put into the atlas if I saw breeding bird activity, not if I just observed something particularly. Here, it doesn't seem to be the emphasis on doing that. And I'm wondering, how do you get kind of a baseline effort if that's the way we're doing it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we will be filtering out, we'll do a data review, a big data review once a year, and we will filter out the checklists that don't have breeding codes with them. And so I think this, like, some of this is a little fuzzy to me still since we haven't gone through this process yet, but I think that then that effort will be like updated. That change will be reflected when you go into eBird after that happens. And so that will then be a more accurate reflection of what the true effort is.
Yeah. In that same kind of vein, sometimes I'll see a bird that I don't typically see in the block, and I'll be driving or something, so I'll just record it as a incidental.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, it won't be any breeding data there, so I might report it as a observed species on an incidental that may then get knocked out as a atlas observation if it's filtered out.
Yeah, if you're not putting a breeding code with it, then it would. But if it's, if it is potentially a breeder and you give it a code, then even though that's incidental, it will that will be in the data.
Right.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Jeff linked the map tool. So if anyone is unfamiliar with that, go ahead and click on that and open that up and bookmark it. Cami said that my most exciting birds were whippoorwill and black-billed cuckoo.
Nice. I'm happen to be in one of the effort deserts.
Mm.
And most of the blocks around me have either no effort or what little I've done outside of my primary block. So as a strategy, would you just suggest that I kind of not just focus on the one block, but say focus on the 6 surrounding blocks?
Yeah, I
And
mean, I guess it depends on what your how much you can commit. So if you have the time to work in other blocks, for sure do that. But like if if you have less time and you maybe just want to like work on completing the one block first and then seeing if you can move on to another block, that might be a good way to go as well.
I don't want to monopolize this, but so if somebody else can jump in here, but some of the upland areas where we are pretty much game land or forestry land, but it's gated off. Any suggestions on how to gain access to the gated off areas where it's a little too difficult to walk into all this?
Yeah, for state forest land, beyond walking in, no, but for the SGLs, for the state game lands, I do think we have approval for next season. We're still working out details, but that we will be allowed to have gates opened, maybe not everywhere, but in a lot of places. For like a 2-week period, we're trying to get June. So that would be kind of the most ideal time.
Mhm.
So, we'll try to share that with everyone when that gets actually planned out and is confirmed and we have dates. So hopefully as many people as possible can plan their birding trips to those locations then. And also if you're doing the volunteer point counts and you have any volunteer point counts on SGLs, then that would be a really good time to try to get those done as well.
Right.
Yeah. You can also, like in SGLs, I think on most of those gated roads, you're allowed to bike, as long as it's non-motorized. So if anyone, like some people might want to bike back into some places too.
Yeah.
I have had a couple people, I think just they know some of the game commission folks on, like local to those places, and they've just reached out and asked them. So if you feel comfortable doing that, it might be worth a shot. So uh, whatever everyone wants to do, but that may not really be necessary if we do get them opened up. And I think the idea is that this will be annually, not just next year, that they'll be
Okay.
opened up for us.
Excellent.
The game lands in my area are gated because they don't want kids going in there at night. But my concern with them is some of them are restricted until June 15th for breeding birds. And before the state had, about 5 years ago, the state had the local farmers keep the Jeep trails mowed. They're not doing that anymore until like, end of August.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's a real trudge to go into some of these places and try to, try to get access. And so I was thinking, is there some way we can reach out to the game lands, the game commission and say, hey, can you, for the next 4 years, can you keep your mowing up to date and not wait till hunting season?
I can bring that up the next time I talk with someone and see if anyone's open to that idea. That's,
I think,
that's kind of the best I can say.
yeah, I think somebody else commented the state game lands in 256 in Perry County. I think that's my block, and I was watching that all spring and summer. They had it locked, which normally each year they have it open. I thought it was because the road got washed out, but I actually parked and hiked up, and the road seemed fine. But as of last weekend, it is open now. So I don't know if they'll lock that next year or if it'll be open from now on. But I think maybe they had kids up there during the summer, and that was the issue. So.
Some other exciting birds were brown creeper, peregrine falcon, broadwing hawk down in Chester County, red crossbill in Cameron County, confirming alder flycatcher. All right, it's pretty quiet out there. Anyone else?
Well, thank you, Amber.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. I guess we do have a few minutes left, so I'm kind of hesitant to open this can of worms, but does anyone want to ask a winter question? Or does everyone just, it's okay if everyone wants to go too.
I just want to say the best thing that happened with this for me was my neighbor saw me out walking up the street and stopped and were talking about it, and they have a tree farm right behind my house, and I now have permission to go back there and bird that. So I mean, it helps for the atlas for my block, but it's also a really cool place that I get to bird now that I wouldn't have had I not been doing this. So
Yeah, that's really
pretty
great.
cool. Yep.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar experience with a neighbor who has 9 acres, and I was hanging out by his driveway because I saw crows carrying sticks into a tree in his yard, and it turns out that he's a birder, and he's not an e-birder, and he didn't seem super interested in participating in the Atlas, but he invited me to come to Atlas his yard for him, essentially his 9 acres. So yeah.
Just on a kind of a separate note, I've been seeing blue jays carrying food recently, but I'm assuming that's more stockpiling for winter than it is feeding young.
Yeah, I think so.
Or any other,
Also, yeah, I think people have even seen blue jays feeding other blue jays, but I think it's I don't want to say courtship, but like some maybe pair maintenance or something going on at this time rather than feeding young.
yeah, and I was just wondering if there any other kind of be careful with this particular observation at different times of year other than now? Is there, or is it kind of more of a in the fall, have to disregard it?
Uh, well, for blue jays, no, I don't think so. I think I mean, I guess in general with corvids a little bit, yes. Like crows definitely have to be careful with. I don't think that blue jays carry food and cache it during the summer to the extent that crows do. Maybe other people can chime in if they know more about this than I do. Definitely have to be careful with crows, with terns, potentially other species. I don't know. Like
How about woodpeckers?
um this time of year specifically or in general?
Well, like redheads, I think are caching food
Yeah.
in trees.
I don't know. I mean, I've tried as much as possible, like when I'm not sure what they're, if I see someone carrying food, I try to just stay there and see if I can see it again. And if they're
Mhm.
headed in the same direction, that doesn't preclude caching, but if it's the right season, then it does make me feel more confident that I'm watching it being carried to a nest or to young.
Yeah, I was pretty certain that it was caching at this time, but I just thought, well, am I being too blasé about that?
Yeah, I
Cody?
think definitely, I think once you get past August for sure, with all the codes, you have to start being more more cautious with using them. Um, oh yeah, and Ali said it, if you can tell that the woodpeckers are carrying insects, then they're not caching that.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
And that would go the same for, for blue jays too, I guess. You know, maybe as you're getting later into, when you're on the fence about if they could be carrying food for caching or carrying food for feeding young, I mean, if you can see what they're carrying, that might help sway your feeling about it.
they're not feeding their young acorns, you say?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we'll wrap things up then. Make sure I haven't missed anything here. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks so much for all of the effort that everyone has put into this. It's been really fun. I'm excited to start reviewing data more and keep carrying on and get ready for winter season. I hope everyone's excited about that too.
Thanks.
All right. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks, Amber.
Hey, I'm talking to the Zoom. Is anybody coming to the county spotlight in Warren?
Mm,
You're coming?
yeah,
Yay! Oh, I'm so happy. Do you know what day?
Saturday, Friday. I think I'm spending Friday night and then I'll be there Saturday. Yeah.
So you're coming to the walk at Akeley Swamp?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Fantastic. Can't wait to see you.
Yeah, same here.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Jeff and I will be there as well.
Yay.
Yay! Oh,
And I think Jesse's coming as well.
oh, good. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so happy. So happy. Yeah, thank you.
See you guys soon then.
All right. Bye, everyone.